In the Dharma Expanse Palace of Akanishta, the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious root Guru. Please bless me and all sentient beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. Now please think to yourself that we must bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings throughout space to the state of the 4 Kais and 5 wisdoms of omniscient Buddhahood. And in order to do so, we must listen to, contemplate, and meditate upon the Dharma. And so thinking in this way, please listen with this motivation with bodhicitta this evening. The Dharma we are listening to are the Dharma talks of the Lord GAMPOPA, a string of pearls, a collection of Dharma talks by GAMPOPA. And so this is a collection of 20 talks. You could count it as 19. There are 2 that you can count together. You can count it as 20. Here, in terms of counting it as 20, we have come to the 18th talk. And so, as in the previous talks, I will just read the text of GAMPOPA's first, and then I will go through and comment on a few points. And so GAMPOPA said, "As for the Dharma, I would like to share with you all. To truly practice Dharma, you must know that worldly concerns are never a friend. It is said, when we look out at this confused world, all acts are pointless causes of suffering. If whatever you intend will be of no benefit, always cultivate looking at your own mind. That being so, with our present mind, we must always give a bit of thought to the mind. When you look out at worldly affairs, everything you'd have done has been pointless. No matter how many properties and houses you have, you must leave them behind and go, so building them is pointless. All your worldly acts have only been non-dharma. In the daytime, you go to work and are in a state of busyness. Morning and evening are given to the stomach's wishes, so you have no chance to practice dharma. Thus your busyness and hardship are futile. Anxious to sustain this life, you do not hold back from misdeeds, hardship, and ill repute, tormenting yourself and leading only to suffering. It is suffering in this lifetime, and as you will be reborn in the lower realms, it will be suffering in the next as well. When we look at the 3 poisons, greed gets you worked up both externally and internally, so you disregard your conscience and act on the greed. In this life, your mind falls under the sway of business and profit, and when you die, you will be reborn, a hungry ghost, and suffer. It is pointless. Hatred riles and vexes you. You disregard death, and your mind stream burns. It is suffering in this lifetime, and, as you are reborn in hell, suffering in the next. It is pointless. From delusion, you do not recognize virtue or misdeeds. You confuse your behavior and are unable to distinguish the nature of virtue and misdeeds. Though you may seem clever and sharp, you swindle and cheat, and as you act, your cleverness destroys your wishes. In this lifetime, nothing satisfies you, and you are never content. With never a moment's leisure, it is suffering. Because of not recognizing virtue and misdeeds, in the next you will be reborn as an animal, and that suffering will have been pointless. Thus, all worldly activities are pointless causes of suffering. If no matter what you intend, they will not help, think about it, all you clever folks. On the day of your death, nothing will help. You will be parted from dear and beloved children. You will leave everything, your home, followers, and so forth, and go. No matter how important it is, you cannot say a single word or see anyone. You are overconfident and haven't thought it through. There is a quotation. If at the time of death, no matter what I look to will not help, what should I do, he asked. Child, nothing at all will help, so always meditate on your mind. Looking at your mind helps, and it is pleasurable. But what is the easy way to look? If you gather the causal accumulation of merit and then look at the resultant accumulation of wisdom, that is called looking at the mind. If you are interested in the creation and completion phases of mantra, that is also called looking at the mind. In equipoise, know that all appearances are mind and look at your own mind. It cannot be established as a shape or color. It is devoid of anything that can be identified, so on its own, it is naturally liberated from all extremes of being or not being, and from all elaborations. Looking at the mind in equipoise is when the mind is not engaging anything. This is truly looking at the mind. In post-meditation, meditating that it is dreamlike and illusory is also looking at the mind. In this way, always cultivate looking at the mind. By practicing in this way, the Dharma will become an antidote for the afflictions. When it has become the antidote for the afflictions, then you are able to look at the mind. In the Dharma, it is said to benefit all sentient beings whose minds are disturbed by the afflictions and who sink into the mire of unknowing. This is how it is, so it is extremely important for the Dharma to become the antidote to the afflictions. Generally, if you do the best practice, you will realize the meaning that never dies. If you do middling practice, you will reach the beginning of the path. If you do the least practice, you will not be born in the lower realms. The striving at practice is important, so meditation is important. Without meditating, few turn their minds away from desire or free themselves from dying. Because of this, meditation is important. Meditation overcomes appearances so that all clinging to truth is liberated on its own, so meditation is important. If you ask whether there is a thing to meditate on, it is as explained. No meditation and no meditator. There's nothing about which you can say, that is what I should meditate on. That practice of the ultimate is called meditation, practice like that. There is no Dharma but that. And so in this talk, which is a little bit longer than some of the other talks, GAMPOPA starts at the very beginning, and he goes from the very beginning to kind of the highest levels of practice, the true natural practice. So we have to look at where we are and start from the beginning. And the first thing we have to do is to make sure that we have no attachment to this life. As I've mentioned before, GAMPOPA was giving these talks to a group of his students who had already left the trappings of a worldly life behind. They'd already left their houses. They'd already come to a remote monastery. Many of them were meditating in caves and just came down for the talks. And yet he still started out by reminding them how they must not be attached to this world, because even when you've gone off into a cave, your thoughts might still be left at home. So right now, when we looking at this now, before we've gone off and found some cave to meditate on, we have to look at what's important in this lifetime. We have to realize that we have an opportunity, and so we have to use it well. So we have to look at this world, and when we look out, as GAMPOPA says, all acts are pointless causes of suffering. So everything we've done has been pointless, and the reason it has been pointless is because we can't take any of it with us to the next world. Our houses, our careers, all the times we've enjoyed ourselves, these are good things that have happened in this lifetime, and we can't deny that they're good, but they won't last for very long. We can't take them with us. And think of what we do in order to get them. So what we have to look at really is our motivation. And so GAMPOPA speaks about this in terms of the three poisons. He mentions in particular, greed gets you worked up both externally and internally. So you disregard your conscience and act on it. So the greed gets you worked up. You really want something. Now this might be something physical. It might be money. It might be a person, it might be sexual desire, it might be any other sort of desire. Greed, the word greed in Tibetan is much broader than the English word greed. So anything that you want to try to get pleasure for yourself. And we'll do anything. When you get worked up by greed, you'll do anything to get it. Think of the lengths that people go through to get the things that they desire. Think of the lengths that you go through to get the things that you want. You'll go out of your way to get something. Sometimes it might seem like something a little bit unimportant. Sometimes it's something bigger. So sometimes you might find yourself driving an extra way out of your way to get to a special restaurant, to get a special dish, or to see a special person, to do a special thing. You go through a lot of effort to get it. Sometimes we'll even go further. I mean, when you think about it in terms of business and profit, what are we trying to do? We are always trying to get more for ourselves. And when we do that, what happens in our next life? We're always trying to get things, always trying to get. And the result of that, you look at the nature of that wanting, and then look at the nature of it. And if you look at it, you see it's really very, very strong. Even if you think it's only small, if you really look at the nature of that desire, of that greed, then you'll see it's got a lot of power, and that power can ripen in your next lifetime as rebirth as a hungry ghost. And we can do the same with hatred. Hatred riles and vexes you. You disregard death and your mind stream burns. When you get really angry at something, you are all so consumed by that hatred that you'll do anything for it. Even if the hatred might not seem so strong on the outside, if you look at the inside of hatred, the essence of hatred is really intense. Try looking sometime when you have a feeling of aversion towards something. Look at the nature of that, and you'll see how strong it is, how much it burns. And so that will then ripen in the future as rebirth in hell. And then we have delusion, and what delusion does means we might look on the outside as if we are very clever, and yet we are mixing everything up, doing things we should not do, not doing the things we should because we're so clever. We're too clever by half, and we end up just destroying our own wishes and our own this lifetime and future lifetimes. So no matter what we attend, if these are not going to be of benefit, why should we do them? So what we should do is what is important. And that is to look at the nature of our mind. So looking at the nature of the mind, this is of course the essence of the practice of Maha Mudra. And so, as I have said, most of us aren't really at the level where we can really do Maha Mudra yet. We can get there. So what we have to do is we have to start where we are, start at the right place. And I think here GAMPOPA gives a number of different steps. The first one of these is he says in kind of technical terms, he says, if you gather the causal accumulation merit and then look at the resultant accumulation of wisdom, that is called looking at the mind. So the causal accumulation of merit means that you do virtuous things. You practice generosity. You keep your 5 precepts. You practice patience. You do the things that gather virtue. You meditate on loving kindness and so forth. These gather virtue. And so as you gather the virtue by doing this, then you look at the state of your mind and you see what happens to it. Look for yourself. Do something virtuous. And then don't just run off and do something else. Don't just congratulate yourself. Look at your mind and see, how do you feel? You don't have to look on a very profound level. Just see, what is it like? And then you'll see that there's power. There's some power. There's something there in that virtue when you do something power. There's something quiet and strong about doing virtue. And then you can also do the meditation practices, the creation completion phases of mantras, such as doing a deity practice. So when you do a deity practice, that is also looking at the nature of your own mind. When you're doing the medicine Buddha practice and you're visualizing yourself as medicine Buddha and the medicine Buddha in front of you, what you're looking at is the nature of your mind. It's an image in your mind. You're looking at that. You're looking at the nature of your mind. And then we can look at our mind just sitting and looking to see what it's like. Not trying to make it into anything, not trying to change it. Just let it be and look at it how it is. So these are the stages of meditation that we go through. And if we do this, then, as GAMPOPA says, the Dharma will become an antidote for the afflictions. And that, at that point, that's when you're truly able to look at your own mind. So it's very important for us to do this. So eventually we'll practice, and you start where you are. You start by practicing the accumulation of merit, being generous and holding discipline, practicing loving kindness and compassion, serving the Guru, serving the Dharma center, and so forth. And then as you do that, you gather the accumulations, you look at the nature of them, and you gradually will develop the wisdom and become able to practice the ultimate practice. So that is the first talk, the first of the 3 talks of GAMPOPA's that I'll discuss today. So the next talk begins, as for the Dharma, I would like to share with you all. In this age, our life is but a brief, fleeting moment. At this time, when we have the leisure, the resources, and all our faculties, we might die before we have even reached the beginning of the path to enlightenment. In order to awaken to Buddhahood, we need the complete and unmistaken causes. It will not happen without a cause or with mistaken or lesser causes. Thus, Buddhahood will not happen without gathering the 2 accumulations, through an extremist view, meditation and conduct, or through the foundation vehicle Dharma of the listeners and Pratyeka Buddhas. You might wonder, why cannot Buddhahood be attained through the Dharma of the listeners and Pratyeka Buddhas? If instead of rousing bodhicitta for the sake of sentient beings, you wish only to achieve peace and happiness for yourself, and do not focus on benefiting others, omniscience will not arise. Well, then how must we practice to achieve Buddhahood? Practice without falling to the extreme of lacking the causes. Do not practice a wrong or inferior path. In order to practice in this way, stomp on timidity, cut the ties, counter attachments, identify your faults, banish hidden faults, take all pleasure and pain as the Dharma nature. First, to stomp on timidity, no matter what you are attached to, apply your conscience and so forth to whatever you are attached to. Then to cut the ties, it is important to think that children, wealth, and so forth are like dreams and illusions. They are impermanent and untrue. They have no nature. To counter attachments, there is a quote that says, "Give away anything you are attached to. Relinquish everything that you are attached to and give it away." To identify your faults is to view the 3 poisons as faults and thus give up the fault of ego clinging. To banish the hidden faults means to expel them from the land, that is the all-ground, and from fear of wandering in the 3 lower realms due to the 3 poisons. Abandon those and make sure you've reached the beginning of the Mahayana path. Think of all sentient beings with loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and plant deep in your heart the thought, may it be just so for them, if only they were happy and free of suffering and achieved perfect Buddhahood. You should use your body, speech, and mind for virtue. So when you get out of bed every morning, rouse bodhicitta by thinking, today, for the sake of all sentient beings, I will use my body, speech, and mind for virtue. If you do this, that resolve will make whatever you do during the day virtuous. In all Dharma, transforming it with bodhicitta is the main thing, so a good resolve is important. Whatever you do will become virtue. But if your resolve is negative, it will become a misdeed. A good resolve is like having an excellent internal servant. So even when you go to bed at night, your body, speech, and mind will be virtuous and thus be for the benefit of sentient beings. This is important. Doing this will make all you do virtuous, and by the power of that, you will reach the beginning of the path. Thus, a good resolve is important. Rousing bodhicitta in this way will turn your mind away from all pleasures and pains and away from this lifetime, and you will effortlessly take your practice into the nature of the Dharmakaya. So in this talk, again, GAMPOPA starts by reminding us of the impermanence of our lives and how we have no certainty how long we're going to have to practice. And again, he's reminding this because it's so easy to think, well, I can do it tomorrow. I'm tired tonight. I'd like to do this tonight. I have to go out and do this. I have to do that. There are so many things we need to do, but we need to practice. And the main thing we need for practice is we have to have the right motivation. And this means the motivation of the Mahayana. Now, of course, there are the non-Buddhist motivations, which we should avoid because they won't lead to our desired result of Buddhahood. But there are also the motivations of the foundation vehicle. That is the motivation of the Theravada school. Now, the Theravada school is actually a wonderful school of Buddhism. It's a really wonderful practice. It's an appropriate practice for a lot of people. It definitely works. It definitely can bring people to liberation. So it's an important view. And so in saying that we shouldn't have the view of the foundation vehicle, we should in no way think that we're saying that the foundation vehicle view is bad. What we're saying instead is that if we want to get to the level of Buddhahood, we need to have the Mahayana motivation. The Theravada vehicle is excellent. It will bring you to liberation, but it will only bring you to liberation for yourself. Now, along the way, of course, Theravada practitioners are very caring people, and they have a lot of compassion. But they're trying to achieve nirvana for themselves and not Buddhahood to help all sentient beings. So their compassion is less than the Mahayana. Their compassion is great in comparison to regular people, but less in comparison to the Mahayana. So if our goal is Buddhahood, we need to make sure we have the Mahayana motivation of wishing to achieve Buddhahood and engaging in Mahayana practice. And then to do this, in order to practice, GAMPOPA says there are a number of things we have to do. We need to stomp on timidity, cut the ties, counter attachments, identify your faults, banish hidden faults, and take all pleasure in pain as the Dharma nature. So the first one is stomping on timidity. So when you're timid, that means that you're not certain you want to do something. And what makes us not certain we want to do something? We're still attached to it. I'm not sure I want to give that up. When you have that thought, then you have to really think about it. This is not going to help me. Whether it is a round of golf, a meal in a restaurant, whatever it is, we have to remember that's holding us back if we are attached to it. Now, if you're completely unattached and playing golf, that's fine. But if you're attached to it, that's a problem. So overcome your attachment. Don't let it hold you back from your Dharma practice. Stomp on the timidity. I can't do this because I don't know what I'd be able to do, how I could live without whatever it is you're attached to. So you have to stomp on that timidity. Then cut your ties. And the ties here mean the things that you have, your children and your wealth and so forth. You have to cut those ties. Not that we stop loving people. This means that instead of loving them in a selfish way, we think to ourselves, right now, I have to focus on what is important so that I will actually be able to bring more benefit to these people in the future. For example, if you think to yourselves, I want to leave my children a good inheritance, and you spend 20 years accumulating a fortune. You leave your children an inheritance. They get an inheritance and they enjoy it until they die. And that's it. If you spend that 20 years, you love your children, and you take that time and you practice as hard as you can so that you either achieve Buddhahood or you become a bodhisattva, or you at least start on the way, then you're on the way. And then you can do something that will help those children not only in this lifetime, but that will also benefit them into the future. An inheritance will only help your children until they die. But if they have the Dharma, if you are able to teach them the Dharma, then that gives them something they can do into the future. This is a greater gift. Now, of course, you can't force it on them in this lifetime. They have to be willing to do it. Maybe if they see you practicing the Dharma and see you becoming a better person, then they'll become inspired themselves. But there's no point in trying to convince your children or anyone else that you love. Instead, use your practice to develop your skills so that you will let your motivation, your skills, and your understanding so that at some point you will see the right way to help those beings. And till that point, you make aspirations, may I be able to help them. It's cutting the ties. And then to counter attachments, and then sometimes there are things where really physical things are really attached to you. You've got this heirloom and whatever. And so what it's saying here is, give it away. Make a gift of it. Take that thing that you're really attached to and give it away. But as we spoke about on one of our earlier talks, you need to start giving small things. Give small things that you're able to give, like meals. Then you start with meals, then you go to something a little bit larger, and you give things that are meaningful to you, things that you think, I couldn't do without that. But then you give it away and you find out what it's like to actually practice giving away. And when you see something get that thing that was meaningful for you, and you see that it becomes something meaningful for them, then that's a wonderful gift. So this is the way to practice. Of course, you might give them something that was meaningful for you, and it ends up not being meaningful for them. So you shouldn't be attached to it after you've given to them either. And then identifying your faults is really important. Always look at yourself. What I find is important is never assuming that I'm the one who's right. Always, when someone brings something up, there's something that they're seeing. There's some reason why they're saying what they're saying. So you need to look at yourself and you need to see what your faults are. And even when other people aren't saying anything, you need to look and be honest with yourself. Sometimes people will even praise you, and at that point, you need to look in yourself and see, do I really merit this praise? It's like it says in the mind training teachings. Of the two judges, hold the principal one. There are two people who can judge yourself. There's you and there's other people. And other people, unless they're clairvoyant, cannot see what's happening inside you. You can look at yourself and tell what's going on, but you have to be honest, which is the hard part. Then to banish hidden faults means there's some faults that are hard to find or that other people can't see. And so you should just try to eliminate those entirely. And then the next one is to take all pleasure and pain as the Dharma nature, which means to practice so that you are willing to undergo things, use your body, speech, and mind in virtue. So whatever you do, whether it's pleasurable or painful, becomes Dharma practice. So you have to transform it with bodhicitta. And this means from the beginning, the morning, this is very important and very helpful. When you wake up in the morning, you think to yourself, today I'm going to use my body, speech, and mind to help all sentient beings. Try to make it a habit so that the first thing you think when you wake up, it's a hard habit to do, but you can train yourself in it. The first thing is, I'm going to become a Buddha for all sentient beings. I'm going to use my body, speech, and mind today to do this. And if you get in the habit of doing this, you'll see that that impetus that you give yourself at the very beginning of the day then carries through everything that you do at night. And then in the evening, when you go to bed, you can check. How's my mind? What am I like? So if you're beginning at the beginning and then checking again in the evening, then that's kind of keeping this motivation of bodhicitta going all the time. And this is really very important. Just by doing this, you'll naturally come to the beginning of the path, GAMPOPA says. Thus, a good resolve is important. So rousing bodhicitta in this way will turn your mind away from all pleasures and pains and away from this lifetime, and you will effortlessly take your practice into the nature of the Dharmakaya. And so the last talk of the collection, A String of Pearls, reads, as for the Dharma, I would like to share with you all. We must at this time turn our minds away from this life and practice. To sum it up, we must instill deep in our hearts the thought that nothing is of any use. Then for practice, we must practice the 4 yogas. The 4 yogas are first, the yoga of one-pointedness, then freedom of elaborations, the one taste of the manifold, and non-meditation. Of these 4, The first, one-pointedness, is identified as being able, once you have caught your mind precisely with any of the techniques for holding the mind, to meditate at will. You can remain without your mind straying from a single focus. As you sustain that, the meaning of freedom from elaborations will dawn. Once you know that all phenomena are free of elaborated predicates, everything you have previously listened to or contemplated goes away like peeling away a skin, and your mind no longer has attachment. At that time, supplicate the Guru, make offerings to the jewels, read and listen to profound Dharma, and so forth. You must stabilize realization. At that time of such realization, you might say, there is no particular Dharma to practice. There is no Guru, no jewels, and no Yidam. There is no accomplishment and no Siddha to accomplish. There is the danger that you will then lose devotion to the Guru and that Maras will come to obstruct you. It is important to supplicate the Gurus fervently, to make offerings to the jewels and Yidam, to meditate on loving kindness and compassion without any bias, and to have no pride. If your devotion fluctuates, your experience will fluctuate and you will have obstacles, so have continuous devotion for the Guru. Experience and realization depend upon devotion, so the Guru creates the path, experience and realization. It is taught in the tradition of the vehicle of secret mantra that blessings are called the path of the Guru. By practicing like that, experience and realization will come uninterruptedly. As you sustain just that, the one taste of the manifold will dawn. As soon as that has arisen, you know that all appearances are mind. The mind arises one in taste with the empty, and the empty arises one in taste with the non-arising. At that point, if you lose faith when you see your Guru and Vajra siblings, that is a Mara who makes obstacles. Thus at that time, offer the Guru and the jewels, your body and possessions. Supplicate them. Compare your realization with Dharma siblings of the same Guru or the experienced meditators. It is important to read the profound Dharma of the youth, Chandraprabha, and to listen to the sutras, tantras, and great treatises. Will there be obstacles after one taste of the manifold has arisen? Until thoughts cease, there will be obstacles. Once the one taste of the manifold has arisen, though, it is taught that it is impossible for envy to come because pure appearances do occur. Thus visions of the Yidam and some clairvoyances may arise. Whatever qualities arise, do not grasp them as true. Knowing they are mind will refine your realization further and further so that the realization of non-meditation will arise. Meditating while mentally grasping meditation as true is called lacking meditation, lacking loving kindness and compassion. With non-meditation itself, there is non-meditation that lacks compassion and the two accumulations, but this is not that. Here, non-meditation means that it never comes and goes, and that it merges into homogeneity so that there is no clinging to realization to meditate upon or to non-meditation. Maha Mudra meditation is just that, because once all aims of grasping, fixation, clinging to truth, and wishing have been liberated on their own, that is resting in the unaltered natural state of the mind essence. The way to practice this is to first train in one-pointedness, then in freedom from elaborations, one taste, and the great yoga of non-meditation, the realization of Maha Mudra free of exertion at the path. The qualities that arise from that are gathering the accumulations and preparing the conditions for progressing along the path, so that you realize your own mind and achieve the benefit for yourself, the Dharmakaya that is like the center of space. Your body becomes the Vajrakaya, so you achieve the Sambhogakaya ornamented with the inconceivable marks and signs appearing but devoid of nature, like a rainbow or a cloud. To benefit others, Nirmanakayas arise from compassion continuously and spontaneously, benefiting all wandering sentient beings throughout space wherever there is someone to tame, without any need for effort and with no partiality like rain falling from the sky. All of us who teach Dharma should know how to teach in each session the complete and unmistaken path of devoting our minds to the benefit of sentient beings, such as a preliminary, training in the virtue in the middle, and making dedications at the end. Those who listen should also understand it thus. There is no Dharma but that. So here in this talk, this last of the talks in the collection, GAMPOPA speaks about the 4 yogas of Maha Mudra: the yoga of one-pointedness, the yoga of freedom from elaboration, the yoga of one taste, and the yoga of non-meditation. So these are stages of Maha Mudra practice that we go through. The yoga of the yoga of one-pointedness is when we first begin and we start meditating, and we practice primarily shamatha meditation to develop the ability to rest our mind on a certain focus, and then to rest our mind without any focus. Because what happens is our minds are out of control. As you look in your daily lifetime, how much control do you have over your mind? How many thoughts do you have? Do you know how many thoughts are going in your mind? Do you ever rest without any thoughts? Are you even aware of your thoughts? And so we have to take the time to slow down and to take some time and do some meditation so that we can gradually still our minds, not by squishing it into, not by forcing it, not by holding it down and making it sit, but by just letting it rest. So you let your mind rest until at some point it's able to just rest. And then when it's able to rest, you look in the nature of your mind. And when you look and you see the nature of your mind, what they describe as the luminous nature of the mind that isn't really anything, you can't find it anywhere, it's not anything you can identify. That stage is what we call the stage of freedom from elaborations. Then as you meditate upon that, then you get to the point where you understand that everything is essentially the same. So everything is one in taste. It all has the same sort of flavor. You can't really say that anything is truly good or anything is truly bad. You can't say beautiful or ugly. All of these are really the same in flavor, the same in nature, the same in being appearances of the mind. And as you continue to meditate upon that, you come to the state of non-meditation where the experience of Maha Mudra is said to be effortless. So where are we on the path? If we look at it, if we have to be honest with ourselves, and if I have to be honest with you, I'd have to say I'm probably somewhere down towards the beginning of the beginning, if even at the beginning, if I've even reached the beginning of the level of one-pointedness. So how do we get there? How do we start? That's the important question for us. GAMPOPA's talking here, and we can read about these in all the teachings on Maha Mudra. You can go and get plenty of teachings from Maha Mudra. Maybe some of you are participating in like Siddha Rinpoche's courses or Mingyur Rinpoche's courses, and these are great opportunities. Some of you have probably taken courses, taken teachings with Trungpa Rinpoche. Excellent opportunities, but where do we start? Where do we need to focus? We need to start at the beginning. We need to start with contemplating the precious human body, contemplating impermanence, the defects of samsara, the nature of karmic cause and effect. Really contemplate them to really understand them, because if we don't do that, we're going to still be distracted by the outside world. And as long as we're distracted by the outside world, how will we be able to bring our minds to rest? When you are always thinking about, I've got to phone this person, I've got this business thing, I have to do all these things. You go to your jobs and you do all these things and you have to think about it. Or you might be thinking about your relationships. This person said that person said this. There are friends that are not getting together. I'm not sure I'm having a hard time with this person. You might be thinking about all the work you have to do around your household, all the work you have to do with your children. You might be worried about their college education, so many things. And when you have so many things that are drawing your mind outside, it's hard for us to bring our mind inside and just let it rest. So in order to do that, we have to take some time Take some time to relax and do a little bit of practice. This practice can come in different ways because people need different types of practice. Some people can sit and do shamatha meditation right away. Some people need to work at it. Some people just aren't ready. Some people are able to do practices like some of the pujas, or they're able to do medicine Buddha practice or another practice on their own, do some visualization. This also brings stability to the mind. So these are all excellent things. So you just do the practices you do. Sometimes also when we come together in a Dharma center and we all practice together, or when we practice together over the internet or however we do it these days, then sometimes there's kind of a different feeling that happens when you do it with a group of people. In any case, we have to do what we can to try to take a little bit of a break. Take some time and say, this is a time when I'm going to do the practice. When you're doing your puja, you're doing your meditation, you put your phone on Do Not Disturb, leave it in another room, keep it far away, don't wear a smartwatch, don't do anything, just devote yourself that time so that you can take the time to do your practice. There's sometimes you have to make it important. It doesn't mean you have to make it the only thing you do in the day at this point. It means that you have to take some time during the day to make it the most important thing for that period of time, be it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, be it for an hour or for 10 hours, no matter how long. You should take some time every day to make your practice important. Give it the time. Take the time. Give yourself the time. Sit down and relax and try to do what you can to practice. And when you're practicing, of course, the more things we're doing outside, the harder it is to really settle down. But just try, do what you can every day. You'll see that gradually, if you keep it up, you'll gradually see the benefit, no matter what practice you're doing. So you do whatever practice is appropriate for you. You can speak with your Lama, you can ask Lama Lodra, you can ask Rinpoche if you have the opportunity, you can ask many people. Just do something that's appropriate for you and keep it up. Do a little bit every day. Then when you've got a good habit, you might start feeling like you can do a little bit more. And so when you feel like you can do a little bit more, then you do a little bit more. And then you do a little bit more than that. And then there are the times of day when you're not doing that. So you spend your 5 or 10 or 15 minutes or an hour doing your meditation practice, and then the rest of the day you have to do what you need to do. You need to go to work, you need to go to shopping, you need to do all the things in your daily lifetime. There are social engagements and things like that. So in the beginning, when you're not ready to give those up, you can do them. But while you do them, you should remind yourself. When you're driving someplace, well, don't do this when you're driving. When you're riding someplace, you try to remember. I find that riding in the backseat of a car is a very conducive place for just relaxing, and I don't know if it's meditating, but it's just relaxing and watching things go by and not really, they don't seem real. It's just like this movie going by on the outside of the windows of the car when I'm in the backseat. Don't try this when you're driving. Or when you have some time, sometimes you're waiting for a call or something. So sometimes usually what happens when we're waiting for a call, what do? We pick up the phone and we start twiddling and looking at this or that. Leave the phone down. Just remember, what was it like during the time when you practiced? Whatever practice you were doing. If you take those moments a few times through the day, maybe you have to ride in an elevator to get to your office. So when you're on the elevator, the phone doesn't work anyways. Most elevators, you don't get good phone service. So you just sit, you wait. Just look at your mind. Just relax. And I think if you do this in periods throughout the day, then you're going to find that taking these periods throughout the day to kind of remember what you're doing in your practice, then when you come and do your practice in the evening or when you do it the next morning, your practice will be a little bit stronger. And when your practice gets a little bit stronger, then when you take that moment in the day, then that's going to be have a little bit more depth to it. a little bit more peace to it. And so if you do it in this way, your practice will gradually get better and better. So you should always remember to do this, to let your mind rest. And in the beginning, it's often really helpful to focus on loving kindness and compassion, because these do a lot to rest our mind and also to develop our motivation. Meditate on loving kindness. You think about other sentient beings so that you can genuinely feel love for other sentient beings, all other sentient beings. And then you think about their suffering and you develop a genuine wish that they be free of their suffering. And then from that, you don't just stop there. Then you think about, what can we do to free them from suffering? This is the critical step for the Mahayana. What can we do to free all beings from some suffering? Think about that. And as you think about this over the day in, day out, I think you'll be surprised at how quickly you'll start seeing some shift in your life. So this is what we should do. This is how we practice GAMPOPA's instructions. And as we do this, then eventually we're going to come to a point where we will feel like, first of all, we feel like we really need to spend more time. It may start out that you feel like, I need to go to this retreat with this Lama. I need to go to this retreat in Maha Mudra with Lama Lodra. I need to go to this other retreat. And then you'll take the time out from your schedule to go and do it. And when you're there, you'll feel like it's important and such a blessed opportunity to be able to do it. And then you'll go to maybe wanting to take longer retreats or retreats on your own. But work gradually. Take the time. Build up your motivation. And as you do so, I think you will find that then you will start to really feel the benefit of Dharma in your lifetime, in your heart, in your mind. And that is the benefit that you can take to the next lifetime. If we do Shambhala practice in order to get wealthy, if we do medicine Buddha practice in order to be healthy, these are very good. But any health we have with this body only lasts as long as this body lasts. Any wealth we accumulate through Shambhala practice will only be with us as long as we are in this body. But what we do to change our mind, what we do to develop our motivation, to become more loving, more compassionate, to feel bodhicitta, to develop some stability, and through that stability then to gain some realization and develop that realization. Anything that we do there is something we can take with us, not only in this lifetime, but on to the next lifetime and on from there, so that eventually we can achieve a good result through our Dharma practice. And if we do that, then we're really practicing the most profound Dharma. So we read a talk like this one by GAMPOPA, and we hear him talking about the level of non-meditation and so forth. That is a level that we do want to achieve, but we have to get there step by step. So that is, I think, the most important thing that I hear from my own teachers, from the Gyalwang Karmapa, from Kenshin Trungpa Rinpoche, from other teachers I've studied with. So I think that, I hope that you all are able to put this into practice. So now the end of GAMPOPA's text has a little bit of an explanation about the text itself. And it reads, with constant assiduousness, Lama Gomsul wrote down the teachings of the precious Guru GAMPOPA in clear, square letters, not mixing them with other accounts and without omissions and additions. Please do not disseminate them to those not in the same tradition of gurus, to those who lack interest, or to those who do not practice. This has two lineages, the mantra and the kadampa. The lineage of mantras from Vajradhara to the wisdom dakinis, to Telopa and the great Brahmin. They passed them to Naropa and Maitrapa, who passed them to Marpa, then Milarepa, who gave them to the guru physician. The other lineage is from Shakyamuni to Maitreya, Asanga, Shantideva, Survanadvipa, Atisha, Tromtrempa, Changawa, Gyagom, Guru Precious Physician, and Lama Gomsul. From there they have passed down successively. This completes the great Dharma teachings, virtue, Sarva Mangalam. So here, Lama Gomtsul was one of GAMPOPA's nephews, who was one of his students. So he was present at these teachings, and after the teachings, he wrote down notes. He wrote down exactly what GAMPOPA had said. So we can feel confident that these words that we have been reading, actually the words that we would have heard had I been reading in Tibetan, were GAMPOPA's own words. Now, of course, you're hearing them in translation, so it's not quite the same, but I've done my best to try to translate the meaning as well as I can, and to try to get some of the feeling, although it's hard. At any rate, the meaning of these, I hope, has come across. And then this comes down through a couple of different lineages, the lineage of mantra and of Kadampa. And so this means that GAMPOPA had two different lineages. He had the lineage of teachings he'd received from all the Kadampa masters, and the lineages of teachings that he'd received from Milarepa, and he brought them together into one. And then that one lineage of teachings was passed down from GAMPOPA and Gomtsul to the first Karmapa Dusum Khenpo, and all the way down through all the Karmapas to the 16th Karmapa Ranjung Rinpoche Dorje. And then the 16th Karmapa Ranjung Rinpoche Dorje taught them to Khenchen Trangpa Rinpoche. And then last fall, I received the transmission of these from Khenchen Trangpa Rinpoche, and then again, he taught them in March in Varanasi. So if there has been any benefit, it is solely because of the blessings I've received from Trangpa Rinpoche. And then he received those blessings from his gurus. So hopefully there has been some benefit in these teachings that we have done. So I'm very happy to have had this opportunity organized by the Trangpa Dharma Society of Petaling Jaya to be able to share these talks with you. I hope that it has been beneficial for you. It's been beneficial for me to think about them again, to consider the meaning over again. So I'd like to thank the organizers, John Leong, Nyat Min Tan, who has done all of the actual technical work in disseminating these teachings. I'd also like to thank Lama Lodra from the center. And to all of you who have listened, I'd also like to thank everyone from any other center, whoever's just happening on these teachings on YouTube, for listening to them. So thank you all very much for listening. So thank you. And now please, as we close, let us dedicate the virtue of having done these teachings now in this time of a pandemic. There's a time when we began these teachings a few weeks ago, most places in the world were locked down. Now many places are beginning to open up. Malaysia has begun to open up. The area of Canada where I currently am is beginning to open up. But even as we're opening up, there's still many people who are sick. There are many people who are dying. There are many people who are exhausted trying to help the sick. There are many people who are afraid of being sick. There are many people who have lost their jobs, their livelihoods. There are many people who are starving. And all of these people are suffering because it's our karma to be born in this time. These are karmas that we can't avoid. This is the full ripening of our karma. But we can still make the aspiration that everyone be freed of this suffering. We can make the aspiration that we will in the future be able to do whatever we can to make it so no being ever experiences this suffering again. We can make the aspirations that we can bring benefit to all sentient beings, both temporary benefit and the ultimate benefit. And so please think to yourself that we dedicate the virtue of this teaching and listening so that we may be able to bring all sentient beings to that state of perfect happiness. O sunam de tam je se pani tobne nye peranam pam che 개가나치 발라주바이 시베솔레